We're going today release the 3 discussion papers that I talked about earlier in the week, and to address issues and alternatives that have been raised by the critics and the opposition parties over the last number of months, and to try to ensure that the people of our province have the information and they feel confident we've explored all options. The first discussion paper is Gull Island, why not develop Gull Island first, examines the hydroelectric generation potential of Gull Island. The second paper, Upper Churchill, can we wait until 2041? Assesses the possibility of waiting until 2041. When the Upper Churchill power contract expires and energy from that resource becomes available. The third paper, Legal Options, Section 92A, Good Faith and Regulatory Proceedings in Quebec, outlines certain legal options which have been examined by the province or are ongoing in relation to the Upper Churchill project. It is noteworthy that every Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador since 1972 has considered one project configuration or another to develop the vast hydroelectric potential of Labrador's lower Churchill River. The Upper Churchill project, the Upper Churchill power contract is a sore point for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. It is a contract that has seen Quebec reap $19 billion as of 2007, whereas the province of Newfoundland and Labrador received $1 billion. In 2010, Quebec paid $2.50 a megawatt hour for power from the Upper Churchill and sold the same for $82 a megawatt hour, more than 30 times what they paid for it. In relation to Gull Island, we're all aware that Gull is a significant hydroelectric resource with more than 2,250 megawatts of generating capacity. It is a vital energy asset for the province, but what has been clear to all governments who have examined this option that we need access across Quebec. And without transmission access, Gull Island is not currently a commercially feasible option. Another reason is that although we certainly need power in our province, the load forecast does not indicate the kind of growth needed to fully use Gull Island's output. Also, even if the Labrador mine developments were all to proceed, there would still be extra power. But if they didn't proceed, whether as a result of issues in the commodity markets or failure to obtain financing, then there would be a significant overbill. Unlike Gull Island, Muskrat Falls is being developed for our own domestic needs. One other point I should make in terms of Gull Island is there's a question, well, why can't we build Gull Island and build a transmission line to the island and a maritime link? Gull Island would require significant transmission upgrades across multiple jurisdictions, whereas Muskrat Falls doesn't. We have access through the agreements, through Nova Scotia, through New Brunswick, and into the northeastern United States. Gull Island would have a lot of uncertainty attached and significant financial risk. There has been the suggestion that we should wait till 2041 when the Upper Churchill power contract expires and energy becomes available. This would require maintaining Holyrood until that time to meet island electricity needs. As you can see from the paper we released on demand the other day, peak demand will increase by approximately 200 megawatts within the next number of years, and quite simply put, we need power. So if to do nothing is not an option, that means if we had to wait until 2041, we would have to continue with Holyrood. That brings with it significant concerns. Holyrood is currently 40 years old, and to attempt to maintain that for another 30 years would certainly run significant risks. I think, as everyone's aware, even to bring it improvements right now would be in the $600 to $800 million range for precipitators and scrubbers. So we wait till 2041. You still have to build a transmission line to get power to the island, because that's what we're dealing with here now. If Holyrood were to fail, and the cost, there's nothing to indicate the cost will be any less in the future. There are also legal uncertainties in terms of the structure of CFLCO. It's owned approximately 65% by the province and 35% by Hydro-Quebec. So essentially, there's uncertainties as to what will take place with the obligation on to respect minority shareholders' rights and the fiduciary duties placed upon CFLCO board members in terms of obtaining a reasonable price for the power. There's no doubt that Newfoundland and Labrador will benefit in 2041, but it's very difficult to envisage what exactly will take place. What is clear is that Newfoundland and Labrador won't, or it's very unlikely that we will get free or cheap power. So there's risk and uncertainty. We need power in the near future, and deferring Muskrat Falls will result in higher electricity rates because we'll continue to be dependent on oil. There will be escalating maintenance costs for Holyrood, and the likelihood that carbon pricing could certainly impact upon the cost of running a facility like Holyrood. I think it was in the MHI report to the PUB that they questioned whether or not the life of Holyrood could be extended another 20, 30, 40 years. Another issue that has been raised, that of legal options. Under Section 92A of the Constitution was amended in around 1982 to allow provinces to have greater say in their in the running of their electricity generation and plants. And with that became the question, well, can we recall power under 92A to suit our own needs? So this issue has been looked at. It's been looked at by successive governments, by the way, and has been looked at in a very in-depth way by us. As you're all aware, there's been significant historical litigation in relation to this file. There have been two cases, the Upper Churchill contract. Two cases have gone to the Supreme Court of Canada. One took 12 years to resolve. None were successful. And we're still in court in Quebec today with the good faith action. If we were to embark upon the 92A recall legislation provision, there is a good argument that the legislation will be constitutional. However, that would take time to review. The issue, though, that we run into is that the contract is governed by the law of Quebec. Continuously, in Supreme Court of Canada has reiterated that key factor. And the law of Quebec means that the power contract has to apply Quebec rules. Under Quebec rules, they have a civil law system. The issue of force majeure would not equate with recalling power for industrial needs in Labrador or for domestic needs in the province. So essentially, we'd be in breach of the power contract. So we could recall power, potentially, but also potentially we'd be liable to Quebec for billions of dollars in terms of the contract. One of the little-known factors, or it's not discussed a lot, but one of the major issues with the Upper Churchill contract, one of the biggest mistakes made, was the contract being governed by the law of Quebec. We would have won in the Supreme Court of Canada, in my opinion, if it had been governed by the law in Newfoundland. So we've learned somewhat from our mistakes. Our deals with Emera, except for the intergovernmental agreement, which is governed by the laws of Newfoundland and Nova Scotia, all agreements are governed by the laws of Newfoundland and Labrador. That becomes very important when you enact legislation, and then you will look at what the laws in your own province are. So we've looked at 92A. We've looked at the good faith action that was suggested by someone that, well, the current action in Quebec could result in the return of power. The current action in Quebec is based on Quebec law, on the overriding good faith argument to renegotiate a contract where there's been a significant change in circumstances or significant inequity exists. That lawsuit has been filed by CFLCO. It's currently before the courts in Quebec, and we're sure it'll take a number of years to resolve. But the remedy being sought is a renegotiation of the price so that from this point on, we get a fair deal from the Upper Churchill. I think it actually will go back to 2009 when the request was made by CFLCO to discuss changes in the contract. One little bit of irony is that under Canadian law or common law, we wouldn't be able to do it, successfully argue this, whereas within Quebec, there's a good argument that we can. So the civil law has given us somewhat of an advantage, although that case is years from being resolved. In terms of Quebec, 2006, under the new open access transmission tariff and the FERC rules out of the United States, CFLCO went to, Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro went to the Régie de Quebec, their equivalent of their pub, and asked for transmission access based on the open access transmission tariff guidelines. There have been two applications before the Régie de Quebec, the Régie de l'Énergie. Both have been turned down, and we're in court currently on a judicial review there. So there's a lengthy litigation history. We have been blocked by Quebec each step of the way, and some argue they're simply asserting their rights, and that we would do the same. But in any event, the reality is that legal avenues have been explored for 40 years. We continue to explore them, and we're still in court today. So, in conclusion on these three papers today, the Lower Churchill project, as you're all aware, has been debated for over 40 years. But our province, in light of all of the papers that we've released this week, in the last 2 weeks, we've looked at alternatives. Muskrat Falls is the lowest cost alternative. We need the power. And we have never been in a better position financially or stronger as a people to move forward with the development of Muskrat Falls. So the question becomes, do we seize the moment or do we let it pass us by? While we must learn from the mistakes of the past, we can't be paralyzed by fear of making a decision. And it's time finally to rid ourselves of the ghost of the Upper Churchill. Muskrat Falls is a good project for our province. It is time to do it, and the time to do it is now.